to my talk show.
In this footage, Leanne Tiernan is 16 years old. On her way home from a Christmas shopping trip, she is mysteriously kidnapped by a man who will later turn out to be a brutal, sadistic serial and possibly England's most dangerous killer.
Fears are growing for the safety of missing teenager Leanne Tiernan.
Police from all over England and other departments will search for her for almost a year until her brutally mutilated body is accidentally found in the woods.
He's a dangerous, cunning, calculating killer. It doesn't get much worse.
On November 26, 2000, Leanne and her friend Sarah went Christmas shopping in Leeds city centre. As she and Sarah were saying goodbye, the girl said she would walk home along a path known as Hoveley Gill. It was dark there and her friend tried to refuse her, but Leanne explained that she would take the shortcut and would rather go home. When Sarah returned home, she decided to see if her friend would call, but to her surprise, she hadn't returned yet. After that, Leanne's mother started to worry about her daughter and at 5:20 p.m. started calling her cell phone. No one picked up for a while, but when the woman called again, the call dropped after the fourth attempt. Pulling herself together, Sharon called the police at 7:00 p.m. and reported her daughter's disappearance. Those immediately began a search for the girl under the leadership of Detective Chris Gray.
As soon as Leanne was reported missing, Hoveley Gill became a focal point for us. This to us was potentially the scene. We had to look at it that way. This was the place that she'd been last seen. This was our starting point.
First, a thorough search was conducted in the area where, according to Sarah, she saw Leanne last time, as well as along the same path on which the girl was supposed to go home. But it yielded no results. Already in the first 24 hours, about 200 police officers and hundreds of volunteers were involved in the search. The search operation was later described as the largest ever carried out by West Yorkshire Police. On December 3, 2000, police arranged a reconstruction of the girl's last movements, reproduced by Sarah Whitehouse and Tiernan's older sister Michelle, in the hope of jogging the memory of potential witnesses to Lynn's movements. Detectives also sent text messages to Tiernan's cell phone, which was now turned off but was briefly activated on November 27, 2000. The Iceland supermarket chain printed her picture and information on milk cartons nationwide. On December 4, 2000, police published a facial sketch of a man seen walking his dog in the Hoveley Gill area shortly before Leanne's disappearance. However, in 9 months of active searching, the police failed to get any more important leads. This continued until the late summer of 2001. On August 20, a man named Mark Bisson was walking his 2 dogs in Lindley Woods near where the body of another missing woman was found in 1992. This time, almost 10 years later, history repeated itself. The dog led Mark to the lying body less than 100 meters from where the first victim was buried. The police officers who arrived on the scene were confronted with a truly gruesome sight. The body of a 16-year-old girl was wrapped in 9 green plastic garbage bags secured with twine. On her head was a black polyethylene tied around her neck with a dog collar. The killer tied the girl's hands behind her back with cable ties. On August 22, 2001, Leanne was identified by fingerprints, and the girl's cause of death was strangulation. On the same day, Detective Chris Gray publicly announced that they were now investigating the murder and asked anyone concerned to contact the police for information on possible visitors to Lindley Wood over the past month and those who were regular residents of the area nearby.
I remember seeing Leanne's body, and she was in the mortuary, and having a feeling of complete and utter driven determination, looking at this child in this state, and just feeling, we've got to catch this monster.
The state of decomposition of Leanne's body has led some forensic experts to suggest that after her death, the body was stored in cold storage or a freezer for several weeks before it was found.
Looking at what the medical and pathology evidence is, everything points to the fact that she was frozen in a domestic freezer for that 9 months period.
After examining evidence found at the burial site, a dog collar caught the attention of police. It was manufactured by a company in Nottingham but was not on sale to local pet shops. The problem is that the manufacturer made the sale to over 220 wholesalers, and police had to call each of these until they found the right one. A Liverpool-based company said it had sold just 3 such collars in the fly using the postal service and provided police with a list. Then a local courier for a British logistics company named John Taylor, who lived in the same housing estate as Leanne, came to the attention of investigators, and literally a mile from where she was last seen alive. Neighbors described him as an ordinary and reliable man. They also reported that he poaches, keeps dogs and ferrets, also sells pet food. However, after publicly announcing the whereabouts of the body, 2 former acquaintances of Taylor told police that under their meetings, he often boasted that he liked to capture animals in Lindley Wood. When police began to thoroughly investigate Taylor's past, they discovered that he often used Lonely Hearts ads. Through phone records, they identified the women he contacted and began interviewing them. One woman who dated Taylor said he likes to tie women up and lock them in a closet. Another said that Taylor has a fetish for tying battens and ties, and complained that he wanted to tie her daughter up up with cable ties and rape her. An ex-girlfriend who briefly lived with him also told police that the reason they broke up was because of his sadistic tendencies, and she constantly felt violated. When asked by police to describe how Taylor tied her up, she described how he fastened a plastic cable tie around each of her wrists and then tied her hands behind her back with a third cable tie. That's how Leanne's body was found. The girl also added that Taylor kept a bundle of cable ties in a drawer by his bed at all times. John Taylor, who lived alone after his wife separated from him in '96, was arrested on suspicion of murder on October 16, 2001. Police immediately fenced off his home gardens and a patch of wasteland behind the property. The gardens were later excavated, and the property, including 3 large freezer chests, were subjected to a thorough search. During police questioning, Taylor finally confessed to kidnapping Leanne. His explanation was that he had not visited Halthe Gill for many years, but happened to be there on the day Leanne disappeared. He said she passed him and he impulsively grabbed her from behind, tied her hands behind her back with a dog leash, covered her head with his jacket, and forced her into his house. He then forced her into his bedroom where, during the struggle, the girl fell off the bed, hitting her head on the floor. He added that he then lifted her up by the scarf around her neck. She then died and claimed her death was an accident. He then allegedly panicked and hid the body in Lindley Wood. Police and prosecutors had their own version of events after the kidnapping. They were convinced that the killer tied Leanne's hands behind her back, preparing to rape her, and then used a cable tie to kill her. When the blindfold slipped from her eyes and she saw his face, there was a lot of evidence that detectives found in favor of premeditated murder. First of all, the leather collar Taylor received in the mail was never found during the search of his home, but it is logical to assume that he used it to secure the black plastic bag on Leanne's head. Second, pieces of green plastic identical because it was used to wrap the body were also found in Taylor's home. Another piece of evidence was DNA analysis of the scarf from Leanne's body. In its knots, experts found a lock of hair that didn't belong to Leanne. Instead of comparing the profile to John Taylor's DNA, they were a perfect match. All in all, detectives were able to find the same yellow cable ties that were used to bind Leanne's body. Also, the red nylon fibers on the floor of the house matched the fibers found on the body. Under the pressure of all the above-mentioned evidence, on February 15, 2002, John Taylor appeared in the Crown Court and pleaded guilty to the kidnapping of Leanne Tiernan. A further court hearing was held and John Taylor pleaded guilty on the first day to the murder of 16-year-old Leanne Tiernan. He was convicted the same day, and the judge sentencing added that he did not believe in the randomness of this crime, and instead believes that Taylor's actions were cold-blooded, planned, and extremely cruel, for which the killer should spend the surrender of his life behind bars. As a consequence, Taylor received a life sentence without the right of early dismissal. At the end of the trial, the police officers who brought him to justice stated that they believed he may have been responsible for other unsolved murders. Because police now had Taylor's DNA profile, they were able to look at other unsolved sexual assaults in cases where there was still available evidence to extract DNA.
I wonder how many other potential murders he's committed. I mean, I would have thought this is just tip of the iceberg with him.
2 rapes particularly stood out because they both occurred in the apartment community where Taylor lived. The first occurred on October 18, 1988. A 32-year-old woman was attacked as she walked through Halthe Gill to pick up her children from school. Taylor, who was masked and armed with a knife, forced her to have sex with him and then raped her. A second similar incident occurred on March 1, 1989, when Taylor, again masked and armed with a knife, broke into the home of a 21-year-old woman in the middle of the day. He forced her into a bedroom where he stripped her, tied her up, and gagged her before forcing her to do the same thing he had done to the previous victim. At the same time, her young child was still in the house. Taylor was formally rearrested in October 2002 and charged with rape. Although at first he refused to cooperate with the police, DNA evidence prevailed, and finally Taylor pleaded guilty to both rapes. On February 4, 2003, he received 2 more life sentences at Leeds Crown Court, but even this time police were not convinced that Taylor's crimes had ended there. Detective Chris Gregg reported that a diamond necklace found in the killer's car at the time of his arrest in 2001 may have belonged to another victim. Because they still couldn't figure out where it came from or who it belonged to, Taylor traveled across the country to meet women he had contacted through personal ads, and also while working as a package delivery man. And after solving 2 rape cases, the police abandoned his insistence that Leanne's murder was an isolated incident. They claimed only that John Taylor may have been a serial sexual assailant for 20 years. He himself denied involvement in any other crimes. However, on October 26, 2018, he was once again sentenced to another life sentence for a series of other rapes and sexual assaults. He is now serving his sentence at Westfield Prison, making him one of England's most dangerous and unreliable prisoners.